Okay, I'm very happy today to have Richard Nable, Rich Nable. Richard has been a police officer in the United States. He's going to introduce himself to you. And he has a long time law enforcement officer and has also two excellent books. I have both his books and I have read them, very nice books. Man with experience providing safety and security to citizens. So just because, you know, we are many martial artists watch this channel in self-defense, and mostly it's extremely important because, you know, self-defense is also, for me, for example, personally, when I talk about self-defense and teach that, I always work with police officers because it's important, because then you are within the realm of law, right? So that's for this reason. I just would like to ask first Rich. So I'm very happy that Rich is here. He has been a long time friend of mine. Oh God, how long has it been? Like 2005 or 4, even right before publication of my first book.
I think that's really correct. Yeah.
Right, Rich. I'm very happy to have you here. So just please introduce yourself to our viewers, who you are, what you have been doing, and so on.
Sure.
Please go ahead.
I appreciate you inviting me. I went into police work in 1987, right out of college. My bachelor's degree is in biology, which is a little bit of a disconnect from law enforcement, but that time in life, it was kind of difficult making decisions where I wanted to go, and I ended up doing the law enforcement route. I worked in the same department in Metro Atlanta, Georgia for, from 1987 till 2014. 2014, I took a little bit of time off, got my master's in public administration, and went back to work helping the police department at the Georgia Tech University kind of refine their training programs. Stayed with them. Well, the job was done in about a year, and that's all I wanted to do. So then from there, I went full-time with Reinhardt University on their faculty as an assistant professor of criminal justice, and also part-time with their police department, which is something that I still do. Trying to kind of slowly get away from all of that. But, you know, we'll just take life the way it comes. I started instructing in 1998 as a general instructor. Got a firearms instructor certification about a year after that. Was on our S.W.A.T team started part-time in 2001, full-time in 2005, which is also when I took over training for the Regional Police Academy in the Firearms Division. Taught virtually every weapons platform that police departments in the States use. Also done a lot of instructing across the country, presented at a number of law enforcement conferences, did 6 or 8 classes over in the UAE, had students from literally all over, Asia, Israel, North America, none from South America that I recall. But so that's it in a nutshell. Just so any topic of interest, feel free to fire away.
Okay, Rich, just because I remember reading your first book, I mean, also in second book, specifically first book, you started also gaining experience as a police officer firsthand on the street, if I remember it correctly.
Correct.
Let us start from there, and later on, I'm specifically personally interested in firearms instructor and S.W.A.T, but let's start from the first step in police work, which is providing security and safety on the streets. Could you just, and which is, I assume, and it's not only an assumption, it's a fact, quite a challenging and dangerous job. Could you please just provide us some information about that, please?
When I started, and law enforcement training here in the States has gone through a lot of evolutions. From the early 60s and prior, you'd apply for a job, they'd say you're hired, they'd give you a ticket book and a firearm and put you out on the street and tell you to go do your job. And by the time the 70s rolled around, the states adopted minimum training requirements, but they were very minimum. So even up until my academy, which was in 1987, our training was only about 200 hours. And so they would give you 200 hours of academy training, and then you would go to whatever department hired you, and you would typically get anywhere from a few weeks to a few months of training with individual officers, and then they would set you out on your own. Now the training, and it depends, it's different across the country. It's usually based on state standards rather than national standards. The minimum training requirement now is a little over 400 hours, with a standard of probably 3 months of field training, and then an evaluation period and whether or not you can continue. Like most professions, there is a continuing education requirement in virtually every state, but those are also very minimal. We're talking between 20 and 40 hours. And so that's the training, in my personal opinion, and having been a trainer for over 20 years, is lacking to a pretty serious degree in most parts of the country. Some are not nearly as bad as others. But so is that kind of along the lines of what you were looking for?
Yes. So it is like it's not a federal guideline in the United States, it's a state guideline. So each
Yes.
state differs from the other, if I understood
Right.
you correctly. Okay.
And the only there's federal guidelines, but they come in the form of case law passed down either by district courts or by the Supreme Court. If it comes from the Supreme Court, it of course applies to everyone in the country.
Yeah.
But those are more general rulings and decisions based on Constitution and facts of a particular case, and how would they apply to our procedures from there forward.
Oh, very interesting. And this training consists mostly of firearms training, or is it all other types of training you would like to share with us?
Well, the training in firearms is probably one of the least efficient areas where academies across the country focus their efforts. Our standard is 1 week, 40 hours of training on firearms, and it's done in a single block, which for learning physical skills has been proven to be the least effective way to train somebody. You can't learn a physical skill in one block of exercise and evaluation and then expect to retain the skill. And so there is a push from those of us on the instructor side to break it down into smaller sessions and go for longer period of time overall. But it's very difficult to change old habits, especially when administrators and politicians are more concerned about budgets and bottom lines than they are about us. And when I say us, I don't mean just law enforcement, I mean the citizens, because we're all the same. So what's good for the police department is by definition good for the community. So.
Oh, I understand. So it's like budgeting a university or budgeting an organization, a company is like, because let's put it this way, the more people shoot, I know it's not a very nice example, the more they shoot, the more they use bullets for training, and the more it costs.
That's fact. Right? And there's typically a manpower shortage, especially in some of the larger departments. So the frontline supervisors are more interested in bodies to be in police cars and answer calls for service. So the equipment and the calls for service aspect typically gets way more attention than the training aspect. And training is almost always the first thing that gets cut.
Yeah.
And I personally don't need as much of a financial budget when it comes to training as I do time. Because as trainers, we can make do with, minimal resources. We have to have some place to train, but we don't necessarily have to train live fire all the time. We can train basic skills, basic tactics. We can train philosophies. We can do scenario-based stuff with really very little financial expenditure other than the time that it takes to bring these people out to the range or to the classroom or wherever we need to go.
Interesting. You know, the reason I mentioned that, you know, let's just make a side comparison. If we, you know, for example, the United States, and as of now, okay, in the past, during Vietnam War, it was a conscripted army, right? So you had draft army. Now it's a professional. Now, for example, let's make a comparison. In Europe, most countries, also Germany changed it just a couple of years ago. But if you go, you know, back then into draft armies, the draft armies, most countries had like 18, 19-year-old who, because of budgetary constraints, for example, seriously, I'm not kidding you. They served 1 to 2 years, and you're going to laugh. They shot like 2 jackets, like let's say 40 bullets in the hole,
Right.
and it was in 2 years, and the rest they were just answering phones. And then I always ask myself, like as a martial artist, okay, make a comparison with punching. You want to learn punch. You do 40 punches, and then you go and try to challenge George Foreman in his prime, for example.
You're exactly
you know
right.
I mean?
Yeah,
And
I did a study not too long ago due to a tragedy that occurred at my particular police department. And it turns out that nationwide, and this was probably 2012, so it's been 7 or 8 years, but the average firearms training for police officers in the United States was 14 and a half hours per year. And that's one of our arguments is exactly what you just said. When I go to administrations about training time, is you are expecting us to perform at the level of a professional athlete, but you're giving us less practice time in a year than most professional athletes get in about 3 days.
Yeah.
And you know, these are skills, and they're no less difficult than playing any professional sport on a professional level. And so yeah, it's ridiculous to think that we can do that with 20 to 40 hours of training in a given year. It's just, it's mind blowing.
And when you just mentioned, okay, it's one of them is, of course, budgetary constraints, but more is time. And time is not given because people need these young police officers for other duties. Did I understand you correctly? Like,
they're more worried about staffing and answering public calls for service. And when you have a high turnover rate and you spend minimum of 3, but usually about 6 months to train up a new officer, not including the time that it takes to do the investigation to get them hired in the first place, and to equip each individual officer, and then you want them out on the street doing the job more than you want them being trained. And it's a very difficult thing for trainers to convince administrators, is that we need more time in the training realm so that we can do a better job in the real world.
Oh, very, very interesting, Rich. And another question I would like to ask you, I mean, I know there are many, I mean, you teach also at university, and there are many books published and articles on why, for example, we don't need to compare now United States to the European Union, but let's stick to the United States. Why in some states, why? We have it, or in cities, we have higher crime rate compared to others. What's the reason? That's something I always ask myself. Is it because of unemployment rate is higher? So can I say if unemployment rate in an area is higher, crime rate is automatically higher as well? Well, how would you, explain?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different factors. A lot of people like to single out one thing and say, well, if we could get rid of this, then we'd get rid of crime. And we know that's not true. The bottom line is there are bad people. And just because someone commits a crime once, twice, even a number of times, doesn't mean that that defines who they are as a good or bad person. And there are circumstances that might make you or I do something that we would not otherwise do, and it might in some cases be considered criminal. But overall, I firmly believe there are bad people, and then there are people who do bad things because of their circumstances, and circumstances could be like say poverty is a good one. If you don't know where your food or your medical care is coming from, then you're going to have to get it somehow, because most people aren't just going to lie down and perish because there's no other options. So I think that certainly the way that you're brought up, your value structure, your life experiences, your socioeconomic status, your politics, your religion, all sorts of things can come together to determine what your behavior is and how society perceives that behavior. So more than one thing, lots of things.
And we also, you said also there are bad people. I mean, we know, I was just reading a couple of years ago, the book, possibly, I'm sure you know, or you know of him, or you know him possibly. It was John Douglas, the psychologist of FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, who set up a behavioral science unit back then, profiling, if you remember.
Right.
And I was reading John's book, and then he was explaining the whole nature of these serial killers, that these guys take pleasure in, okay, they suffer from some serious psychological damage, right? Are you also talking about this? Because these people exist
Certainly.
as well. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I mean when I say truly bad people. It is a lack of empathy. It could be, like say, bad wiring in the brain, the sociopathic tendencies, any number of things. And the psychologist will be trying to determine, and the psychiatrist, for as long as mankind exists, why these things happen and how we can treat them. And, my experience, and I'm not a social worker by any stretch. I do try to treat people the way that they treat me. But I have run into some people over the last 30 years that are just flat out evil. And you can't talk to them. You can't hug them and make them be nice. They're going to want to perpetrate violence against other human beings because that's what they enjoy. And they're selfish, and they're going to do it no matter what happens. It doesn't matter how much money they have. It doesn't matter how comfortable they are. They are just plain bad. And they're going to continue that behavior until someone stops them.
very interesting, because you mentioned that they only think about themselves. A couple of days ago, actually, I was talking to a German psychologist, and she told me she was doing some, she's not a profiler, actually, not at all, but she did lots of research on clinical narcissism, right? Mm-hmm. So this grandiose narcissism and different types of narcissism. And we were talking, and she told me these type of people, like serial killers, most of them suffer from a very, very high level of narcissism. So everything centers around them.
Around them, yeah.
Right? And then she told me that much, and combined with being a sadistic person, combined with other features, you can never, ever penetrate in her language, penetrate in her mind to help, because they completely shut off the reality, and then you give them some power and force, be it like a firearm, or be it, some of them are physically so strong, and then they do harm on people, right? That's what she told me. And she's by no way into martial arts. She's by no way a officer. She's actually a very, female psychologist, very, small, very, tiny woman. But she was telling me, Manusha, I'm an academic, but you cannot stop these people just by talking to them. That's what she was telling me. So she just...
And I think that's been something that people have been noticing for thousands of years. And when it's almost a feeling that you get when you're around the truly bad people, like what you're talking about. And thankfully, I firmly believe myself that those people make up a very small part of the world's population. And it knows no boundaries. I don't think that those people are concentrated in any particular race, religion, culture, geographic area, anything else. I think it's just part of human genetics. X number of people are going to turn out that way, regardless of how you add it up. So thankfully, I think that's the case. I think the majority of people growing up in a civilized country, if they have the option, or if they perceive that they have the option, they will typically not end up being criminals.
Yeah. And Richard, this was about, and then of course you said that you met some of these evil people during your service, also on the street, and then another question I would like to ask you is this: if you don't need to answer, if you don't need to answer. This is a question
I'll
for
do the best I can.
yeah, right. It's a very, I mean, because as you know, I also studied in the United States and Germany, so I know your country quite well. But some people here in Europe never been to the United States, or when they were just like 1 week, 2 week vacation. It's not enough, or they are not fluent in English or American English anyhow. They don't get the whole gist of the society. But one thing which, you know, police officers, for example, in Germany or in UK or in other European, in France, keep saying is that why is there more shootings happen when by police officers in the United States or other way around compared to UK or Germany or France and so. Excuse me to ask you this question, but because this question always comes up, right? Could you please?
I totally get that. I'm not sure that like before, I'm not sure that there's a single answer, but certainly the most obvious is we have more firearms than any other country.
Yeah.
And so going back to what you were saying about bad people, good people, people who are in bad circumstances that do bad things, when the firearms are more readily available, they're more likely to be used. I think if you compare sheer rates of violent acts, whether it's a fist fight or a domestic quarrel or anything like that, you won't see that big of a difference. No. But we have a much larger amount of gun crime because we have so many guns. We have more than enough in private hands to equip every single man, woman, and child with at least one and probably two.
Yes.
And so